Okay, anatomy and physiology part 2 in a much better posture. It doesn't make me look like I've got a bigger belly. Okay, so here we go. Spine, cervical, 7, vertebra, 7, 12, 5, 5, 4. 4 is the coccyx. Don't use it, it's a vestigial tail essentially. Then you have 5 vertebrae that are fused in the sacroiliac joint. Then you got lumbar spine, 5 thick, the least mobile part of the spine, 12. So it's 7, 12, 5, 5, 4. And that's how many vertebrae you've got. And that's the order as well. So very mobile, hopefully not hypermobile. Less mobile in the thoracic spine, and the least mobile in the lumbar spine because it's the base of the column, it's the thickest part. It's there for stability. Okay, acetabulum, proximal head of the femur sits in the acetabulum in the ball and socket joint. Glenohumeral joint, that's what the shoulder sits in. You've got anterior and medial forces holding the shoulder in place. Okay, everyone sort of thinks like a doll, your big muscles hold your shoulders on, but actually it's the rotator cuff muscles that hold your shoulders in place. Okay, so you've got a medial force and a lateral force that hold the ball and socket joint in place. And it's infraspinatus subscapularis. Infraspinatus subscapularis. The other rotator cuff muscles are rotator cuff muscles, but there's not a lot of rotation. Most of them are just passing the muscle to the deltoids. So there might be a little bit of abduction, and then the medial deltoid will take over. So the most important is infraspinatus subscapularis for medial and lateral rotation. And then I didn't talk about primary and secondary hip flexors. So primary hip flexors are quadriceps, vastus medialis, intermedialis, lateralis, sartorius, rectus femoris. They're also doing this similar job. There's a certain degree of extension, and then it will be rotation, lateral or medial flexion, is depending on where the muscle attaches. So if you're for example, latissimus dorsi attaches to the proximal head of the proximal end of the humerus, and it's actually in a position where it causes medial rotation in the shoulder like that. So if the lats contract, you get a bit of that going on. Okay, but if the muscle was just inserted onto the back of the humerus, you get external rotation. But this is how clever muscles are. Just that little tiny insertion, that little origin or insertion point can make the difference between medial and lateral rotation, just by where it attaches to the bone. So, yeah, medial rotation with the latissimus dorsi. And same with the pectoral muscle, so there's a degree of medial rotation. That's if someone's got some overdeveloped pectoral muscles, usually their arms are sort of like that. Okay, so they're medially rotated, and it's overdeveloped. And you need to think about developing posterior forces between the shoulder blades to try and pull that back and open. Okay, so 7, 12, 5, 5, 4, vertebra. The vertebra is mobile in rotation, extension, lateral flexion or ipsilateral. Okay, ipsilateral, contralateral rotation. Your spine will go in almost every direction. You mustn't move your spine out of a normal range of movement. Don't hyperextend. It's not contraindicated to hyperextend out of into an atypical range of movement. Okay, adducting muscles, abductors. You've got adductor magnus brevis longus. They're bringing the knees in. They're in reciprocal inhibition with gluteus minimus and medius. One force closes the legs. One force opens the legs. Okay, as they shorten and contract, they are abducted by the glutes, or as they shorten and contract medially, they adduct the hip. Okay, so that's adductor magnis, brevis, longis, and that's in order. They are actually attached along different sections of the medial aspect of the femur. Okay, and they are in a balance between glutes, medial, like quadriceps are balanced with hamstrings, tibia and tibialis with gastrocnemius, flexion, dorsiflexion, plantar flexion, dorsal flexion. Okay, and the opposite muscles, the opposite lateral muscles like scalenus, sternocleidomastoid, and yeah, so I can't think of anything I have not included in anatomy physiology, but no doubt in a few minutes I'll suddenly jump out of my skin and go, ah, what about this? Okay, so you've got muscles, three different types of fiber. You've got two types of fiber powered by chemicals: adenosine, glycogen, adenosine triphosphate. Essentially, all of them sacrifice a phosphate to replace a phosphate to make it triphosphate and explode again in a chemical reaction. The heat of your skin is many reactions per second of adenosine triphosphate going from triphosphate to diphosphate. Your body temperature, half your 37 degrees, is just your body burning and doing this process where it sacrifices a phosphate to explode, keep your body temperature at that rate. So half your metabolic activity is just keeping your body temperature at that at 37 degrees, and that's done by these little triphosphates exploding into diphosphates and then finding that third phosphate, and so ad infinitum. And that's how those chemicals works. The other things where if you go over a certain period of time, say you went over 3 or 4 minutes of exercise with a continuous repetitive, say you were jogging, after you've burned through those chemicals, you start burning oxygen, proteins, and fats. So you're working aerobically then. Okay, so all the others are anaerobic or processes of burning chemicals. Then you get through and the byproduct of which is obviously lactic acid, or in the case of creatine phosphate, you just run out of it after 4 to 10 seconds, or maybe longer, depending on how many fast twitch to slow twitch fibers you have. Most people are 60-40 one way or another. You can usually tell who's more fast twitch by looking at the build of the body, but you would actually have to biopsy a muscle fiber. So you would have to go into the actin and myosin filaments, and take a biopsy to see what percentage of red fibers and white fibers are alongside each other. White fibers are deoxygenated, red fibers are obviously oxygenated, and that's why they've got that sort of steak-like look with the myoglobin in the muscle. Okay, I've got clients arriving, I better go. Please ask me more questions.